Joining me now is Aaron David Miller, former State Department Middle East advisor and senior fellow, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us. So let's begin with the fall of this regime. It happened so quickly, almost without resistance. How were these rebels able to take control and push Assad out of Damascus?
I mean, this was in a year plus. This was the second event in which powers large and small, intelligence organizations, and most analysts, I'd put myself at the top of the list, after October 7, which is the first event, failed to anticipate, number one, how hollowed out the Syrian regime was, how miserable was the state of its military forces, number one, and how competent and effective and disciplined Harat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, which drives a coalition of Sunni Islamist groups, some of whom have ties to al-Qaeda and ISIS, at least in the last several years. So I think if you put the two together, is an explanation as to how from November 27th until this morning, they were able to seize Syria's major cities, Aleppo, Homs, Hama, and then, of course, Damascus. And the fall of the Assad regime, no one is going to miss Bashar Assad or, frankly, the memory of his father. It was a mafioso, kleptocracy, drug Captagon exporting group that extracted enormous resources from the Syrian people and was brutal and repressive. The question now, of course, is what or who will replace it? And that question is going to take quite a long time to sort out, I feel.
Yeah, and I do want to get to that. And I'm glad that you mentioned, for the sake of all of our viewers, remembering who Assad is. A brutal dictator with a horrendous record of violating human rights who used chemical weapons on his own people. He has now arrived in Russia, has political asylum there. What will happen to him? Will he ever face justice?
Well, you could ask the same question about his host, Vladimir Putin, who is also under arrest warrant by the International Criminal Court, accused of war crimes. And I think Bashar Assad will be in the same boat. Putin is unlikely to ever face a tribunal in The Hague, and I suspect Bashar Assad won't either. The interesting question to me on the Moscow piece is, the Russians have bases at Tartus, an airstrip at Khmeimim. They've had long relationships with Syria, and I just wonder how giving this brutal dictator sanctuary is going to limit whatever influence they think they can have with HTS or other attendant groups in Syria. So I'm not sure there was a whole lot of other places for Bashar Assad to go. There was Iran, of course, but yeah. His wife is ill, I understand, and needs to be treated for leukemia. I think that may have been a consideration as well about where he was going to go.
So let's round out this conversation with your point about trusting this group and their leader. They have links to al-Qaeda. Can they run Syria's infrastructure and economy? We heard that supportive message today from Biden, but this is still considered a terrorist group.
I mean, there's a $10 million FBI bounty on Abu Mohammed al-Golani's head. The U.S. has designated HTS as a foreign terrorist organization. Look, governing Idlib province, in which HTS created institutions, local leadership, dispensed social services is one thing. Really, in a country of 23 million people and a capital of 2.5 million, where most Syrians are not of the strict Islamic sort of bent of HTS, strikes me as a very heavy lift. And I'd only conclude with one sober point. I wish the Syrians the best. They've suffered for far too long. But if you look at the examples of where authoritarians in the last 20 years have been toppled, in Tunisia, you now have an autocratic regime. In Egypt, you now have a repressive regime. In Yemen, you have actually very little governance, and you have the Houthis. And in Iraq, after Saddam, Iraq may actually be the best of the lot. So the real question to me is what happened in Syria going to break? Is the past prologue here? Is this just another cruel twist and turn in a saga of sectarian tensions and external meddling of outside powers that will deny the Syrian people the security and the prosperity and the dignity, frankly, that they deserve.
Aaron David Miller, again, thank you very much. Appreciate your
Thanks for having
time
me.
with us.